tiari ki whakarongo mai ra kia mātou e tiari ki titiro mai ra kia mātou tēnei mātou o tamariki e whakapono ana mātou ki a koe. Te matua te tamaiti, wairua tapu e. Te matua te tamaiti, wairua tapu e. E tiari ki whakarongo mai ra kia mātou e tiari ki titiro mai ra kia mātou tēnei mātou o tamariki e whakapono ana mātou ki a koe. Te matua te tamaiti, wairua tapu e. Te matua te tamaiti, wairua tapu e. Te matua te tamaiti, wairua tapu e.
Kia ora hui no tātou. I rara tūnui tō tātou matunu i te rangi ngā mihi ki a tātou katoa. Ko hui mai nei i roto ngā whakāturanga o te ao kohatu. Mai ngā kōrero i tuku iho mai ngā tātou mātua tūpuna kei a tātou te rangatahi tēnei tō tātou rerenga nānei. Ko mutu te ao tawhitio kei te haere tonu te ao hurihuri. Koe nā mō ngā tātou tamariki moko puna ngā mihi ki a koe ki hali nā te karanga mo tēnei rā. Ngā mihi ki a koe lona, haere mai koe ki te kōrero mō ngā whakairo i roto tō tātou whare. E koe ki tātou katoa, ko tai mai nei ngā mihi ki a koutou nō reira. Tēnā koutou, kia ora huihu no tātou katoa. Kia ora. Wow, thank you, Kelly. I think what we'll start off with is talking about these kohatus. These kohatus, when we talk about the hikutai, which is these crystal quartz, and we talk about the rehutai, these two stones came down from the baskets of knowledge. Our tupunas talk about tāwhaki, they talk about tāne with the baskets of knowledge. And these were the taongas that these two kohatus came down with. This one here, te hikutai, ko te māhunga tēnei, tō hinengaro ne. I ngā wā tawhito, he tapu te māhunga, your head is very tapu. You're not allowed to touch people on the head. My father, he put his hat down, you dare not touch his hat. They were very staunched in the ao. So when we talk about crystals, of course you know that in your phone, you have the crystals. In the radio, you have the crystals. So tīmata mai e te hikutai ne, so you can talk about your knowledge. Those days you had to look after your head, because we never had a written language. Everything was kei rota te mahunga. So that's why the head was very important. Even your huruhuru, you never cut your hair at night. It was a no-no. So the head was very important. That's why in the old days they had special times for cutting hair. And the head, when we were children, we used to always have to wash our hair in the river. I don't know why. We had a bathroom, but we never washed our hair at home. We used to have to go down to the river. I had long hair, I had plaits. And I thought and I used to say to my mum, when am I going to have my hair cut? She said, oh, if you have a haircut, it'll look all bushy. And I went, oh, I don't want to look like that. Yeah, so your hair was very important to keep it flat and wash it down into the river. I don't know why they did that. We never asked questions. That's the difference with us growing up. The old people did a lot of things that we never ever imagined. Yeah. So I go from there to the other kohatu, which is the rehutai. This is, kohatu is the heart. Everything you do it with love, te aroha. When you're upset about something and someone says something to you, it might be saying the wrong things, the old people always say, tuku ngiata te aroha, send a love. Don't get into the conversation, just sit quietly, but tuku aroha, that's what they always say, tuku aroha. And you find that this stone here is to do with the healing of the heart. Yeah. This one here is the waitotara. Now in here is your thoughts. And I've got a lot of bugs in there, bits of all sorts. So what I'll do here is I'm going to go to the river, have my karakia to release whatever I'm worried about. So while I'm doing that, there's my thoughts are going into the river. And while I'm praying and saying all my karakia and the whakarite, all my thoughts are going into the water with the wai. Ne? That's the power of our wai. And so when it's clear, your mind is clear. And that's why we have the karakia at all times. No matter where you go, what you do, always start off with karakia. You can always start your karakia with yourself. Nobody has to listen, nobody has to hear, but inside your wairua is the karakia. And as you move whatever pathway takes you, you'll find that you'll see things that you never ever imagined you would see. And that's all because you have cleared your wairua and you can see whatever's ahead of you. There's a lot of other stories I could tell you, but that's what these are. Stones are, river stones. Waitotara, they call waitotara. Very rare stones. If you find them, cherish them because they're very valuable. These were given to me by an old lady down in Te Aomatu. She must have been about in her 80s. So each of these stones were given by different people. The hikutai was given to me by, she was from Ngāti Apukura. The rehutai was given to me by my sister when I turned 50 birthday present. And so these stones here all have their own kōrero. So this is why I talk about these stones, because they're very important. The last one is the pounamu. Now when we talk about the pounamu, this is the taonga tuku iho. Maybe your grandfather or grandmother will give you a stone to hold on to. Or maybe when you travel overseas, you'd wear your pounamu. Kaichaki e kaichaki tērā. And it would all come down to your tūpunas, to your parents and your grandparents. So I always heard these as tūpunas. This also is your part of your whakapapa, because he kākana koe, you are a seed from those ancestors. So each one of you, your kaichakis follow you. They'll always be. So I'll put these angels behind, because we talk about the kaichakis. And ko kaichaki ene. Very important to know that each of these taongas are part of you. Everything you walk on this land, the kaichaki, Maia Maui, the island, te ika Maui, te waka Maui, te punga Maui, all those stories of Maui are real. The stories of Tāwhaki is real. My nanny, this nanny here, she was the last tohunga at Wenshua Tūturu Wharewananga in Te Pue's time. And she had her healing over here in Otara, because Te Pue told her when she came out of, she had to go to Otara. Since I was a child growing up, I never saw people from all over the world. I only saw Māori, because where I come from, it's a very remote area of the west coast, the Hauauru, that's Ngāti Mahuta, te Hauauru down the west coast, where the Tainui Waka landed. This is the Tainui Waka here. And it landed on our grandfather's whenua, Te Pauewe. And there's honey at Rawakupuna. These stones came from here, from Manukau. These were taken down by Rakataura in his time. He took those stones down there. That's punga, that's honey. A lot of kōreros for these waka. This is my mum here, my whaiakeke, my older parents. This is my parents here, my mum and my dad. My dad from Rangiriri, but we moved to Taharoa because of Ngāti Toa having to move down to Kapiti Island. So all the Black Sands area, that's where mum and dad come from. And my mum's, there's my nanny over here. I used to stay with her when I was 5 years old. We used to go to Aotea. We had to walk 2 hours walk over the hills. No roads there then. And she had the last punga house. Well, her older sister was our grandmother. She must have been about 118 before she died. She had 7 children. They all died before her. Her oldest daughter was 100. So, yeah. But she had memories just amazing. And when she had her moko, she was telling us you weren't allowed to look in the mirror and do the moko. You're allowed to look at your reflection in the water. Yeah. But she used to have big gardens, and in the morning she'd have camp oven and she'd poke he parawa, and every day we had to go down to the beach to pick pippies, and that's our bread, poke parawa and our pippies. I think we must have ate that every day. I don't know what else we had because we were miles, there was no shops. It didn't matter. And when I look back at the years that my mum was doing her medicine, she brought me up. So I was taken away from my parents when I was a baby, but that's my real mum's older sister. And this is her mahi, was all to do with healing. We had tuhungas after tuhungas living with us. And she was she did all the rongas, the medicine lady. And we had hundreds of people coming down from north. In Whina Cooper's time, they all came down from the north, people coming from all over the world. And that's when I first started seeing people from all over the world. And I said to Mum, do those people believe? She went, aye, yes. There were some amazing stories with these two old dears. But I was only a young mum. My job was make cup of tea for everybody, make sure everybody's eating, making a cup of tea. I didn't really think about the mahi when you were young, because I had my first child, so just te aroha. But Nanny went down to Whakatane and she brought to heal Uncle Kapi, because Uncle Kapi also a healer. And then he went down there and brought him back. So the three of them worked together. My mum did the medicine, Nene Naki was the tohunga, and Kapi. So with the three of them working together, the two children, which was Ata, and she was named after the Māori queen, little Ata, and Lollipop. We were the young ones in the house, and we'd always be making cups of tea or doing whatever the old people wanted, you know. So with my life, I saw healing from a child growing up. I really didn't know until they passed on, till my mum died, Nanny died and Uncle Kapi died. Then I realised it's our turn. I went, oh, okay, what do we do? So I create a whole lot of programs like this, like the kohatus, and I've got another program which I do over there that's to do with colour therapy. I do another program to do with meditation. I started that before the lockdown, and about 3 Saturday mornings we'd all come here. And the programs are really needed to go out. And if other people wanted to utilise the program, that's fine, because it's a chance to give out to the young people. No, we're not always here. One day it's our turn to cross over. But it'll be your turn. You might take something from it, I don't know. But there's no right way and there's no wrong way. Everything is all good.
Te tūtahi he mihi tēnei ki te whare. Tēnā koe. Kia koe hoki te whae taini. Mo tō manakitanga kia māta kia tātai i ngā wā katoa. Ai, tēnā rā kate katoa. Ko ai ahau, he uri ahau no Waikato. Te taho tōku papa ko Ngāti Wairere, ko Ngāti Haua. Te taho tōku māma ko Ngāti Pāua, ko Ngāti Whanaunga. Ai, ko lōna riki hana tōku ingoa. Ai, ko au te tahi o ngā kaitui. I'm a kaiako, I teach art. My tamariki have all come from kohanga reo, the kuri kaupapa Māori, and wharikura, which is college. So they all can speak their language, Māori language. So, and then for me, privileged to have learnt the language, even though I didn't learn it growing up. My parents were both matatau i te reo, but we were taught, English was the spoken language. And then I think after I had my second child, I made a decision, I was going to learn te reo Māori with my tamariki. So here I am, and sitting inside of this beautiful whare, Matariki, te ingoa, and we're right in the heart of Howick. So Tiny Drummond, she's the kaitiaki for this whare, and you'll see some of the beautiful artworks inside of this whare. I just want to talk about the tuku. So these tuku, well, if we start from the beginning, there's a good way to learn about tuku. So we start from te wehenga. So the te wehenga is the separation of rangi and papa. So rangi being the sky father, and papa tuanuku being Mother Earth. So when rangi and papa were together, they had over 70 children. And the 70 children decided one day that they wanted to separate. Because now and again, as rangi and papa moved around, they could see this light. And then it went again, and back to darkness. So they started to figure out there must be something out there. So anyway, between all of the atua, we're going to call them atua, because they are, some of them were chosen out. And anyway, Tāne became the chosen one. So Tāne, with the help of some of his brothers, Te Matauinga, Tangaroa, all those brothers helped Tāne to separate rangi and papa. Of course, there were those that didn't want to be separated and were quite happy to sit in te pō, in the darkness. So after a little while, Tāne tried to figure out, now how are we going to separate rangi and papa? So one of the brothers, which was Tāpiri Mātia, and Tāpiri Mātia was one of the atua that didn't want to be separated either. And he didn't quite get it until he realised what was going on when Tāne was separating his parents. So Tāne hopped onto his shoulders and his legs up. So his legs were, I suppose, the po that separated his parents. And they call the tuki, there's a tuki that he used to cut the sinews, because although he was trying to force them apart, his legs just weren't doing it. So he had to ask his brother for the tuki, the sacred tuki that separated rangi and papa. And hence came all these colours. So we're talking about te pō, which is the blackness, and then te ao, which is the light, and then the whiro, which is the red. So as soon as rangi and papa were separated, ka puta mai te kura, that's the red, the colour of the sinews separating. So when we look at our tuku, they tell us these stories. So tuku aren't in the house to paint a pretty picture. And so each of these tuku have a story. So I'm just going to start with this pattern here. So this pattern is called the roimata turuturu. So roimata is tears. Yep. And turuturu means like a hard rain. So if you imagine, you're outside somewhere and then this hard rain comes down. So the story talks about the separation of rangi and papa. And of course, once they were separated, you know, all they wanted to do was get back together and embrace each other. But the children had already separated them, so hence the pattern. So we the colours of the pattern, the blue representing the rain, or the wai, the water, and then the white, of course, representing the water. So this pattern here is the separation myth. So what I've just talked about with the separation of Rangi and Papa, if you look at that pattern, you can tell the story. You can tell the story to the children, you tell the story to anybody, you know. So that's that pattern there. In here, this pattern here, we call that the kaukau. So kaukau, in most of our wharenui, the kaukau normally sit in the corners of the whare. And there's a purpose and a reason why it sits there. So kaukau is like your armpits. That's the English word for kaukau. So we have a whakatauki for this particular pattern. So the whakatauki is i roto i te kaukau, ka kitea, it'll come back to me. So. But I just want to get back to the pattern. So this pattern talks about he tohu rangatira. So he tohu rangatira is the sign of a chief. So there are a couple of stories that we can tell to the children or to the adults about this pattern. So this pattern is talks about birth. So in all of our tuku patterns, it's all about whakapapa. It's all about relationships. So if we had a carving in the middle there, and over here, then it will talk about the relationships between these particular carvings. In this case, we have a korowai, yeah, and it's got a ngā manu sitting on where the head should be. So in normal whare we would have a carved popo. So that would talk, these tuku would talk to the popo, but the whole setup of a house with tuku is that this one here is sitting in the corner and its buddy would be sitting diagonally on the other corner, straight across, diagonally, and then so on, you know, so they're all going diagonally until you get to the end of the whare, and then that one on that corner would go diagonally and its buddy would be on this side. So the kaukau it's about birthing. So back in the day, when women were hapu, sometimes they knew that their baby was going to be a chief. So they needed to protect their baby. So how could they protect their baby? Sometimes giving birth, you know, the baby, sometimes they die or the mother dies, but they knew that this baby was going to be a chief, so they had to find other ways. So what we call now a caesarean is that practice back then. So they would cut, you know, the woman and take the baby out, or she would be a chief, of course, and they'd take the baby out that way. Yeah, I know, and I get a lot of questions. Ooh, what happens to the mother? And yeah, so we hope that, you know, they're both well, but we know that all eyes are on the baby, you know, that their baby will come out, because sometimes babies, you know, something happens during childbirth. The other pattern, or the other meaning for this pattern is for when our warriors went out to fight in the wars and the battles. So when we weave whāriki, and these days you see a lot of beautiful patterns coming out on whāriki, but each of those patterns that were woven back then, they always had a reason. There was never a reason why they wove a whāriki, which is a mat, unless they had a reason for it. So if you saw this pattern on the whāriki, then that was a pattern that our chiefs used, or the people that were fighting. They stood on the whāriki, rubbed their feet on it, and that gave them mana before they went out to battle. So it wasn't just for the chiefs, it was for all of those that were fighting. So so that's that pattern there. This one over here, this is called the mumu. So mumu means like a checkerboard pattern. Yeah, so you won't know how to play checkers, then that's this pattern here. So what mumu is, as you can see, there's a pattern here and a sort of in a block, another pattern there and another pattern there. So mumu is about relationships. So could be one tribe marrying another, like a princess of one tribe marrying a chief in the other tribe, and bringing those tribes together. But if you can have another look, you can see there are patterns inside of the one tuku. So this pattern here is called the purapura whetū. So purapura is like a potato, yeah, but it's also stars. So the purapura whetū acknowledges all of those that have passed on. That's what this pattern here does. And then we've joined it, of course, with the roimata turuturu. And so just in this block, you can talk about, say, matariki, and how this time of the COVID and all of those that have passed on, and acknowledging them, So that during matariki, there was a time, where the waka o te rangi, it flies in the air, and it's been up there in the stars for about a whole year, 11 months, until it comes to this time of the matariki. And then it releases all of those spirits, all the wairua, those souls, and they all turn into whetū. So that's what this pattern does. And then over here we have the niho taniwha. So niho taniwha is, in Waikato, we talk about he piko, he taniwha. So the pattern here, the niho, is about teeth. Hey, that's the word, niho, teeth. Taniwha is a taniwha. So you're talking about the teeth of the taniwha. So what does the teeth do? Obviously you're going to eat something with it. So the teeth of the taniwha. The taniwha is like a metaphor. Sometimes it can be something in the water, it can be something, in the forest, it could be a person. So, but in this case, the niho taniwha is about when you eat food, it's about nourishing your brain, nourishing your body, so that it's about seeking knowledge. Hey? Without food, without nourishment, what happens? You die. So it's about nourishing your body, and that's what our taniwha used to do. There was always a tohu out there, and you listen, and when Whai was talking about all those different tohu, and tohu are signs. It's a good sign, a bad sign, and if you use things to protect yourselves, like your pounamu, or things like when you get karakia. Karakia is most important. So before we started our session this morning with Tiny, we had karakia. So, and then of course when we close today, we'll have another karakia. So those are things that help you, even before you start the work, any work you do, always have a karakia. And acknowledging all of those atua, those ones in the trees, those ones in the sea, the ones in the air, the ones in the ground, acknowledging them all for providing that food, because the food doesn't come from the shops. Hey, we know the food comes from the ground, or the trees, or the water. So so that's just that pattern's talking about all those things. So you could just pick out a pattern and tell a story. Pattern here is the Pautamatani. So again, we're going back to the separation myth. So after Rangi and Papa were separated, then they had all of these 70 atua. So they're all here on earth and wondering, now what do we do? We've separated our parents, but we don't know what to do. So again, Tāne was chosen to seek, to go and, I suppose, kōrero to Io, to God. And so they worked out a plan, and so Tāne had to go up into the heavens to talk to Io and to seek that knowledge, what to do after now, I suppose. So this Pautama pattern talks about Tāne's journey up into Ngārangi Tūhaha. And each of these realms, there is a kaitiaki. There's a kaitiaki like a guardian that looks after that different realm. So Tāne couldn't just go on up to see Io. He had to start at the bottom and work his way up. So in each of these realms, Tāne, entered, and it was about knowledge. So this pattern talks about seeking knowledge. So with our children, we could use, say, them going off to university and saying, okay, I want to become a doctor. And then about, say, first year, they meet somebody else, young man, and next minute they're having babies, So they might have got a bit diverted, and they may later on become that doctor, or they may change careers. So it's about Tāne going up into those different realms and seeking that knowledge. And then right up the top there, once he's finally got there, there are these three kite. They talk about the three kite of knowledge. Some iwi talk about kohatu, that they weren't kite, they were kohatu, which are, stones. And so Tāne, in our Māori mythology, Tāne, these kite are called te kite tuatea, te kite aronui, what is that? It's testing you. Come on. Okay, we're going to sing that song. So anyway, he goes up to seek those kite of knowledge, and he gets them, and he gets to talk to Io, God, and by then God has said to him, listen, you've already learned all the knowledge that you need to as you'll come up these 12 heavens. Some iwi, they say there's only 10 heavens, so but this particular tuku was designed for matariki, for this house. So, and we've used the chakra colours, so the rainbow colours, because Tiny does a lot of colour therapy, So that's why you can see all the different colours. The other kōrero for this particular pattern is, if it's in the middle of the house, where it normally sits, it would sit on the back wall. And the pattern changes. And the pattern changes because there is a tūpapaku laying below this pattern. So what the pattern does then, all of these different realms become whakapapa. So that person that would be lying under this pattern, it would be their grandparents, their great-great-grandparents, and so on, back up to God. And then when the tūpapaku, the tangi has left, it goes back to being the pautamatane. Do we get those three kete?
Mm-hmm.
Ko te kete aronui, ko te kete tuatia, ko te kete tuauri. Nā me. Okay, and I was going to talk about the last two patterns, but I think it's important because it relates to this one. So this is still the pautamatane, and it's another side version, I suppose. But if you can see it more clearly, and that journey of Tāne going up into Ngā Rangi Tūhaha and right up into heaven where Io resides. So after Tāne had received all this knowledge, he goes back down to earth, and there are all his brothers waiting. So you've got to remember that Tāwhiri Mātia did not want his parents separated. So Tāwhiri just wanted, so he stayed with Ranginui. So he is the god of the winds, of the storms. So when you know there's a storm out there, that's Tāwhiri, and Tāwhiri is angry at his brothers. When Rangi and Papa were separated, Papa still had one child, or probably a few, but I'll talk about one in particular, and that was Ruaumoko. So Ruaumoko is the atua of the earthquakes, the volcanoes. So when you feel that shaking, that's Ruaumoko. And he's still inside of his mother's womb. So Tāne comes back down to earth and tells his brothers about all of this knowledge that he's learned on his way up in Ngā Rangi Tūhaha in the heavens. And he shares that with them. So Tangaroa goes off to the sea and he becomes the atua of the sea. Tāne goes into the Ngāherehere and he becomes the atua, the kaitiaki for the trees and for the plants. And then we have our other atua, like the atua of the gardens, of the marakai. Yeah, there's haumie, and then rongomatane. That's all our other kai that we eat. We have the gods, the atua of the huarako, which are the fruit trees, all the kai that grows in the trees, and then of course for the marakai. So all these different atua are out there they are our kaitiaki, and we are their descendants. So we are the descendants of the atua of Rangi and Papa. So it is our job to be good kaitiaki. Yeah. And then the last tuku here is a kaukau. You can see the chevron pattern. And there are 3 kaukau. So this pattern here represents this marae. So this is the 3rd time that this marae, or this whare, has been built. And if we go back into 1991, when, or before that, when the little whare, it was only a little whare at the time, and it was down there in the Ngāherehere, and that was down. So Tiny approached us if we would come and help her to, because it was carved and it had tuku tuku inside of the little whare. So we worked on the carvings and the tuku tuku to restore them. And at that time they were building the new whare. And at that time it was called torere. So the new whare was built and we were able to put the carvings back onto the whare nui and inside of the whare. And then, what year would that have been, Tiny? 91?
1991.
1991. That was the second whare. And now this is the third whare. And it took so the second whare was burnt in 2005? Four. And again, we were here, the word went out, we were here to awhi Tiny and of course the Ropu Awhina that were looking after the whare. And just, the tuku tuku were smoke damaged, the carvings were burnt, so we could not restore them. And of course there were taonga inside. Some, there were only a few that we could actually save. So again, through the work of Te Ropu Awhina, Tiny, many others, we have this building here, and it wasn't easy. It was really hard to get the third whare up, and the name torere was taken away, unfortunately. But fortunately we have a name. They put Matariki for the name of the new whare. So so what we've done with this tuku tuku is just he mai mahara, remembering the first whare, the second whare, and now we have Matariki. So there's only three, there's no more. Okay. So, and of course, we have the kaukau pattern, and then the niho taniwha pattern coming off the sides. So that's our pattern for Waikato, for Tainui. So, and yes, it reminds us of, who we are, ko wai koe, ko wai, and then when we introduce ourselves, it's about our pepeha, who we are, So I just want to acknowledge, our mana whenua, and of course, the community as well, with all our schools. We've had so many schools come through this whare, and they're still coming. I don't know how many children come through the whare, but there's a whole lot of schools. And there's really only Tiny and a small group that awhi the whare. So I just want to acknowledge you, Tiny, because you're still here after so many years. But the whakatauki for the kaukau pattern, ia te whakatauki, ko te kukuna o te whare kakitia. Ko te kukuna o te nākau kurikitia. That means that, you can see. You see what you see. When you see it inside of the whare, ka kitia. But inside of your nākau, you can't see. That's the hidden. That's called the kurahuna. So we talk about our rongoa and we talk about our arts, but there's always that part that you don't know. And in order to find out, you've got to sit with tohunga, with our experts, you know, because we can only share so much, but some things remain hidden. So with that, I go to close with a waiata. Yeah. Oh. Huti a te rito te hara ke whea te ko mako e ko. Whakatai rangi te arere ki uta rere ki tai. Nau e ki mai, e aha te mea nui. Maku e ki atu, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in this world? There's people, there's people, there's people.
Korowai is the huka, and the feathers, if you're using feathers, well, that's more of a kāka huruhuru. So I don't have any huka here today, but for whiriaroha, I'm part of one of the people that came through this through whiriaroha to learn how to do korowai. So the nice thing about whiriaroha is they start you off with a little pack. So you come in and you sit down with a pack and they give you a board to put your, to start you off. They teach you how to do the feathers. So these feathers come in either on a long, like that, or these are chicken feathers, and so they teach you how to bind them into 3, and then you bind them with the soap, and until you get enough to start your korowai. So basically they'll start you off, this is the bottom of the korowai, so yeah, so this is what you start off with when you get to whiriaroha. So Christine and Ida are the tutors here, and they also have a group of ladies that help them run the, but I'm still learning, and this is one that's been half done, so I'll just demonstrate a little bit about how we weave that in. So you've got in your starter pack, you have your these are mop here, and they're different kinds, but these are the ones that whiriaroha use, and of course your wool for the sides in your pack, and you get your feathers and your soap. So pretty much that's basically what you start off with. And you start off with the up here, you I think they use about 40 whenu, and the reason why these are colours is so that the students can see what they're doing. It makes it a little bit more clear. So basically we weave the top, and then another line, and then the next line is your feather. Then you have a blank line, and the next line is your feather. So this is the starter pack. This is what we all start off with. And so the feathers, once they've been soaped, they're put on. I've already got one on here. So you put one feather on a whenu, and then you fold it up and hold it there with your nail, and then just weave it in. So I've already woven that in there, nice and tight, keep it straight, and then you bring another one up, and that's your blank one. Weave that in, and then bring another one up and put another feather on again. So eventually you'll you'll have a line, just a line of feathers, and then you will do a line of blank. So I just finished this one off. So that stalk stays on that whenua there. And we're going to weave that. It's good to have long nails. And then to hold the feather in, we're going to fold it up onto the next whenua. So you can see the next whenua, fold it up into there, bend it down. That will eventually go behind the feather, so you don't see that stalk. And then we'll tie that in. And so starting off, we're all thumbs, and it takes a little while just to learn one line. It takes a long time until you get used to it and get into the rhythm of it. So that's, and then you've got another blank. So every third whenua has a feather. I'll leave that there. So these are the material that we get. These are the different whenua or mop that we've been using. And then this is the latest one, another again. So this one here is what that korowai there has been made out of. So you once you finish, this is the finished product of one of the ladies that had just finished her first korowai. And once they finish their first korowai, they get certificated at the end of the year, have a little celebration, which is lovely. And then, you know, the lady can progress on to something that's a little bit bigger. This nanny here. And then we start adding in the different patterns. Mawhiti pattern. So there's a lot of experimental, and then we can go into this one. This one's my first big one. I did that for my daughter's graduation.
Beautiful.
And that was made from the rope here, that one there, and the feathers were sourced from here. They're I think they're rooster feathers. Yeah. So that's a graduation one. So you get a little bit experimental, and I had no idea what the korowai is going to look like. You kind of get guided as you go along. So it took a long time just to decide what feathers to use. And then you start looking, they teach you the different, the meanings of the different patterns. And so you incorporate those. So for her one, she got 3 different iwi, 2 hoi waikato maniapoto. So those are her maungas and her awa. And her connection to her studies, of course the 3 baskets of knowledge. Yeah, and she's still on her journey. So she's she said to me, "What's this, Mum?" And I said, "It's actually a mistake." But it was too late to take it. And I said, "But it's all right, because you will make mistakes in your life." And she goes, "Oh yes, all right." But that was so these are also the ladies at Whiriaroha make these for Middlemore Hospital.
Starship?
Yeah. So these are for the baby unit, for parents who have stillborn or have lost their... Yeah. So they make these a couple of times a year, and quite a few of them and they donate these to the birthing units. So these are some of the other things that whiriaroha encourage. You know, you can, there's no limit really to what you want to do, but they're there to help you.